Sam, I gotta, man, I don't even know how I want to say this and not sound like a fan, but I am so glad. It started with Bears comments last week. I was on here mad that people were like scared that he said it, and I'm like, he didn't say anything inflammatory. And Coach Rhule has been extremely confident this offseason, and he said it again. We're a good football team. I'm just excited that for once we have some leadership and some confidence, and he doesn't couch it. Right? When Coach he doesn't couch it and say, yeah, but, or it's early, but like he just says it, he believes it, and he moves on. And I'm just telling you, like as a player or as an assistant coach or a guy that wants to be led by somebody like that, there's power in it. And I think the fan base is getting ready to turn the corner with that too, right? Do you feel that the fan base is just gonna ride with the tone that our head coach is setting?
Yes, I do. I think what I wrote today is, I think the fan base is still ready and still willing to kind of turn around and buy all the way in. I think there's a younger segment of the fan base that's probably got one foot out the door, but is willing to come back in the door if it can feel like Saturday night felt. And so you get 2 more night games here at home. I think it's going to be fun. I think people are going to have a good time, and I think that's what younger fans want. And of course, the older fans have always been there. So yes, I think the fan base is ready to turn that corner. As I wrote today, I think a lot of people are. I think the national media wants Nebraska to be good. It's just obvious that's the case. I mean, they want that, and people are ready for some new stories. And Nebraska can potentially be a new story. They can win a lot of games in a row. They have a good enough team to beat all the teams that are in front of them before they head to Columbus. So, I think people are ready for something like that, and Nebraska appears ready to provide it. There could be a stub toe along the way, but they appear ready to do that from a physical and competitive standpoint.
No, I'm going to cut some of the words that he used short, but he basically in pregame, Sam, he looked at me and he said, I talked about his confidence, and he said, we're a physical football team. We're good. We're going to be good tonight, and we're going to be physical. There was no, well, but we still got to line up and play it. Well, we still got it. He didn't couch it with anything. He looked back over his shoulder as if to say, now just watch. And I couldn't help but how that made me feel. I'm like, you know what? Like I love it. It's about goddamn time we stop worrying about what the potential negative outcome could be, and move towards like what you actually know. And he said all along, this is a good football team. He said it.
Yeah, and I think there's reasons to believe why they would have thought that ahead of time. I think certainly they're old on defense, and they've certainly instilled a culture of physicality and toughness, and they've got better players on offense. Now that didn't always bear itself out on Saturday night at times, right? But they're better, and by better I mean they're a year older at certain spots, and simultaneously they went out and got some good football players. And a couple of those guys picked up penalties on Saturday night, but over the course of a season, I think everybody likes what Ja'Cory Barney's going to bring, so long as people stop committing penalties on his plays specifically. And
he could help those guys out by not getting so sideways. Once he starts getting back vertical, it's easier to block for those guys.
Yeah, and I was mentioning that to a colleague in the press box, and he kind of looked at me like I was nuts. And I said, look, like part of it is when you're constantly switching directions like that, they don't know which side you're going to be on. So that changes the nature of their blocks. One of the things that I appreciated, and Carter Nelson didn't play in this game, or if he did, he played sparingly. One of the things I appreciated in the first game about Carter is that when he got behind that block, he kind of slowed down and let Banks get around the block, and then he accelerated. And sometimes Ja'Cory Barney's so fast and so shifty that he's kind of moving in different directions a bunch, and that can be challenging. And so that probably set up one or two of the penalties. But I also thought the one on, I think it was Ramir Johnson,
that's terrible.
That call.
It was terrible. But that one wasn't near as bad as, and that was bad, but it wasn't as bad as Justin Evans. That was egregious, and I'm like,
that was a bad call too. And so the refs missed a few. They missed a few holding calls on Colorado.
At least a few, yeah.
But they missed 2 or 3 there, and they called a couple too. But yeah, it was an inconsistently called game for sure. I mean, it just wasn't called as well as I thought it could have been. But it's water under the bridge now. Nebraska's moving on. They're playing Northern Iowa, and then after Northern Iowa, they get Big Ten crews all the way out, and everybody knows that depending on the crew you get, that could be a great night or it could be a tough night. But at least they'll know all the crews, and there'll be a real clarity on who calls what, and they'll be able to clean up the execution a little bit.
Sam, speaking of kind of all the penalties and everything, like how do you personally evaluate, especially the second half offensively, when you've got multiple kind of explosive plays called back because of penalties, some real, some imagined. You've got kind of just the disjointedness that comes along with having a penalty on seemingly every play, certainly every drive. Like, how do you personally kind of separate what's real versus what the final stats or score ends up being?
I really like some of the things they're trying to get done on the edges of the field where I do think they have advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a swing pass to Ramir Johnson, and he got around the edge, and Thomas Fedoni had a really good block. I like the quick toss to Ramir that went for a touchdown but was called back because of a hold on Ben Scott. I like what they're trying to do with Ja'Cory Barney around the edges. So I like the fact that they're trying to spread defenses out. If defenses are going to pack in and they're going to say, hey, we're going to put 7 basically between the hash marks, 8. Colorado at times had people really jammed in there. I thought Nebraska countered with good plays. They just have to execute a little bit differently on some of those. But I like the play calls. I like the quick passing game that I think Nebraska has. I think, the downhill run game can always get better, but I think it's not bad. And then, we'll talk to Dylan, I think, Tuesday. And I don't know if he's going to get into specific plays, but I think he'll be able to say, yeah, there's a couple there where I could have done something different. I thought there were a couple plays in that game where, unless he was being asked to throw it, to that sort of check down, I thought there were some opportunities to throw a ball in there. But what he did is he took the coaching and he said, hey, don't make a turnover. Don't do something unnecessary. And that's fine. But I think he's got the ability to push the ball downfield more often. And we'll probably see that as the season goes on.
We probably would have been mad about that too as a fan base. Why are you throwing? It's like, you can't win for losing, man. These guys got to learn how to play with a lead. And I'm not down on Sam. I said it's such revision. It's just weird. It's like, we played in 94 and it's 17-0 at the half and the crowd is electric against Colorado. The game turns out to be 24-7. It was a 7, we played it as a scoreless half. So I don't care, right? Like, you hadn't won a game like that in forever. And I'm just not a big fan of apologizing for it. But I will say this,
right?
Learning how to play and coach and call plays with a lead takes time, right? Like, I didn't leave the second half and think, oh my gosh, sad as horror. I'm like, nah, you know what? Like, these guys, Coach Thomas, Coach Rhule, they got to figure out what their guys can handle too. And let's not forget, Colorado has good players too. Like, that game, that game was incredibly physical. And Colorado waved the white flag halfway through the fourth. Like, let's not forget that, right? Like, they were like, okay, we just got to get home. Our guys are dropping like flies. Let's just get home. Like, there's something to that.
Yeah, they're going to have a hard game at Colorado State because I think they're going to be beat up.
Yeah, and coaches know, right?
Have an opportunity.
Coach Rhule, he let you know how he felt real time when he said, hey, I first of all, I hope Shiloh and Shador are okay. Like, he's witnessing real time and he can hear the physicality. He can see that Colorado conceded. That's just the humility in a coach saying, man, they know they got their tails kicked. We know they got their tails kicked. I just hope everybody's okay. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
I mean, like
I think,
that's sad to me. That's satisfying. If I'm a coach, I'd rather watch you bleed slow than decapitate you. It sounds a little sadistic. It just feels better, right? Like, and I think
they said,
he witnessed that.
Yeah, they pretty much said no more at the end of the game. And I'm sure if you watched Deion Sanders' press conference, which was 13 minutes long and not bad.
Yeah, it really wasn't.
I think he would have been very
it was
satisfied with
much better than I thought it was going to be.
Better than Shador's.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Shador's wasn't great. But Deion, his presser was I think, what's the right word? Mature. And he's, older than me. So of course he was mature, but
it was pretty self-aware. I thought it wasn't bad.
Dude,
he didn't try to.
He saw.
Yeah, I think he just saw that his team got beat up physically, and I think Sanders, respects when he sees a team that did what Nebraska did. So, and then also didn't try to rub it in at the end or make a big point or whatever. They just, But yeah, it was a successful game. I think they'll probably look back on it very fondly years from now. But I'm sure there's also a sense of, okay, turn the page, get healthy this week, play your butts off this week. And then, you know what? You got a pretty good team coming to town. Illinois is not bad. They're better than I thought they were going to be, for sure. And, beating Kansas, I don't think Kansas was a ranked team. I would not have ranked them, personally. I'm not sure
they turned the ball over like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they lost actually some players from last year. They're not as good as they were last season, but that's still a good win. And Brett Bielema didn't just fall off the back of a truck when it comes to coaching. He knows how to coach a physical football team. So like Brett Bielema will not just hand a game to Nebraska. So the challenges become real. Nebraska's not going to just walk all over the teams that they have, after this week. And maybe they won't walk over Northern Iowa. I don't know.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, do you think we have – I kind of want to put this in perspective a little bit because last year, or even really at any point over the last, decade, if I had told you Nebraska was going to get a punt blocked, miss a field goal, have 12 penalties, and not score in the second half –
the third down conversion rate was also poor.
Is in 0% of those games would you have predicted Nebraska win, much less win by 3 scores? Right. Are we kind of glossing over that because it just it was so dominant in every other fashion? I don't know that everybody's kind of processing, hey, Nebraska played really well. They still overcame a lot of things that have doomed them in the past.
They converted 25% of their third downs and won by 2 scores.
Yeah, I would say that I'm not glossing over it. I think there's certainly issues to correct on special teams almost immediately. What I would say is that when you have this level of defense, that can make its own plays and score its own points, you just, and I'm not saying that they feel this way, but I've watched enough to know that they've got a little bit of a cushion. The 2009 Nebraska team was one of the most mistake-prone teams I can ever remember. But they won, I think, 10 games because their defense was incredible. And they made all kinds of mistakes. And they lost the game because of them. They lost to Iowa State because of all the mistakes they made. But, their defense, Nebraska's defense, is really good. And so it covers up some of the mistakes. And it makes you, Iowa knows this story too. Iowa's offense last year was the worst offense I think I've ever seen. But they won a lot of games because they were good in the other 2 phases. I think special teams is going to be a concern. It was a concern of mine before the season. I wrote about it a lot. Have not ever been sold on the punter. He had 2 great punts, and he had a couple other punts that weren't very good. They just weren't. And then he had 1 block. And then the kicker missed a field goal. He struggles on hashes. Yeah, you probably got to put him in the middle of the field because otherwise he struggles with pulling the ball. He just does. And so, there's a whole bunch of things to work through there, and they'll they'll have to figure that stuff out as they go. But I do think they have a kind of defense that gives them a little bit of margin of error. And the offense is better than it was last year. You know, I think there's things they can do on offense that they did not have the capability of doing last year because they didn't have the bodies. They weren't healthy and they weren't talented enough.
Yeah, they're going to be pretty good on offense, I think. I don't worry about that at all. And it's two things, just listening to you talk. Number one, the position group that plays most like their coach right now is probably the running backs, because I think Coach Barthel is tough. He's demanding. He's actually been able to reach Ramir on a personal level, which I think is great, because I think East Coast guys are different. But my favorite thing, Sam, is, and you're like, man, why do you like Coach Rhule so much? The team is just like I want to be as a person, which is just like him as a coach. You're going to have some flaws. You're not perfect, but you're confident. People are better. You want people to be better the more time they spend with you. You want to go to work every day, and you want to leave something better than you found it. Like, those things to me are kind of who I think Coach Rhule is as a person. It's what I would like to be, and you're starting to see it with his team too. They're not perfect, but they don't make excuses. They go to work every day. They're tough, and they don't apologize for thinking they're good. Like, that's like life 101, right? That it seems like that's what this team is turning into. And it's no coincidence that appears to be their coach's, it's kind of his DNA.
Yeah, they're fun too.
He's fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
fun, you could tell they're having fun, and Colorado didn't have any fun on Saturday night. I think a lot of times Colorado is a program that's juxtaposed to other teams, and other teams might be better than Colorado, but by God, you know, Colorado's over there having fun. It's Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, and it's the whole thing.
I think it stems from pressure.
Night, Colorado did not appear to be having any fun.
Nope.
And Nebraska appeared to be having a lot of fun. And that contrast was stark. You know, Colorado got its butt handed to it twice last year by Oregon and Washington State. And Oregon seemed like they were having fun last year, and Washington State didn't really care. You know, they just hammered them. But Nebraska seemed like it was having fun. And that's something that people see on TV, and that's something that resonates with recruits. It felt like a physical party. And I'm guessing they'll get a couple of recruits off of what happened on Saturday night, whether they're 25 or 26 guys. I'm guessing they'll get a couple of 25 guys because, you know, even if those guys could be a part of something else, like a Texas, they may want to have more fun at Nebraska. It's just possible. And Texas looks like the best team in the country based on what they did at Michigan. So we'll see. Maybe Texas is ready to go on a 5-year run that gets every good player in Texas to go to Austin. I don't know.
I don't know about that, Sam. I mean, I get where you would say that because they did hammer a pretty good Colorado State team. I don't know about pretty good, but that was better than they're better than 52-0. But I will say this about Michigan, and I said this last week, and I was dead serious. How is Michigan going to score? Like, I said that out loud, and that's a bad match. A downhill, fast, good tackling team like that is a recipe for disaster for Michigan because they like to do the dictating from a physicality standpoint. Like, that just wasn't going to work. You know, it was
right.
I mean, Texas is good. I don't know who's good, right? I'm Oregon. They're trending, right? Maybe Boise's better. They weren't the week before, though. I think we like Texas.
Georgia seems
Bama
good.
struggled. Yeah. I do think Georgia's good, though.
Yeah, I think Georgia and Texas are good. I don't know about anybody else.
Who else is in it? So you know what's interesting? You know who maybe
Ohio State's very, very talented.
They're super talented.
Yeah.
I'll be curious to see how their physicality carries, because I think Texas is physical.
Yeah,
I'll be curious to see how physical. I think Ohio State's capable, but they don't look like that when they play. Texas does.
Texas is physical and they're athletic, and you know the thing that Michigan was missing and it's surprising to me, they don't have like a big receiver. They don't have a Braylon Edwards who used to play there 20 years ago. They don't have that guy. They have a lot of smaller guys, and then they've got Donovan Edwards, who's a running back and a big guy, and maybe he should play more receiver because they don't have the same level of line, and it's going to be hard for him to make a lot of hay in the middle of the field. I think they've got to maybe line him up outside and give him some chances out there. And then Michigan, because of, somebody said this to me, I had asked, why did Michigan go get a transfer quarterback? And somebody noted, well, they didn't know who their head coach was going to be until way into January, because Harbaugh hadn't really made a decision. They had nothing to sell to people. They didn't know who their head coach was going to be. They didn't. The
whole signed contract, non-signed contract was kind of weird with Coach Moore too.
No, it's not a good look, and they obviously need to go out and sign a quarterback because, the guy that they have in there is, I don't know, maybe the 15th or 16th best guy in the Big Ten. Like, it's not commensurate with the level of that program. Ohio State has like 4 guys better than that guy. So, and they're just sitting there waiting to play. So I would say, Michigan's going to have a long year. But again, I would not have, I don't have a poll anymore. I wouldn't have ranked Michigan in the top 20. They might have been in the top 20, my top 25 or something like that. But I didn't pick them for the playoff, and I had them losing 4, and they might lose 5 now because I thought the way they looked against Texas, it wasn't pretty.
I thought quietly that was a good win for Michigan State.
It was surprising.
He's
a good coach.
It's going to fly under the radar like ho hum, but I mean, when you're trying to change the trajectory of a program, that's a good win in East Lansing, and he's a good coach.
He's a very good coach. Yep, and he learned from a good coach too. So, and from many good coaches, including Chris Peterson and Mike Riley and others. Like, the guy knows offense really well, and so Michigan State should be able to score. I don't know that they're more than a 5-win team, but you never know. Like, the one thing you can tell is don't think anything about last year as it pertains to this year's Big Ten. outside of Ohio State being good again.
Yeah.
Nothing appears. And Rutgers is good. The Rutgers will run the ball, and they'll do the things that I think we thought they were going to do before the season. But Illinois looks better than they did. If Purdue beats Notre Dame this weekend, which they could, look out there. Iowa, I don't know. I mean, Iowa can actually run the football, and they probably should have won that game.
Oh, yeah.
And they gave up a deep, long pass.
That second half that might have been about as un-Iowa as I've seen in that second half.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, their defense just kind of fell apart, but they can run the ball. So you can't count on anything. We'll learn a little bit about UCLA and Indiana this weekend when they play each other. I don't know what we'll learn, but I don't think Indiana's bad. I don't think they're bad. I think that coach is super motivated, and so we don't know exactly what this season's going to look like. I don't think Minnesota's very good, but we'll see. There's a lot to learn this specific week. And the week after about the Big Ten, the back half of September, we'll learn some things as we go into October.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you again next week.
We appreciate you. Bye.
Thanks, Sam.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.